I love to see the towns passing by and to ride these rails neath God's blue sky. Let me travel this land from the mountains to the sea, 'cause that's the life I believe He meant for me. And when I'm gone and at my grave you stand, say God called home your rambling man.
Welcome to Ramblin' Man Podcast episode number 156. This one's with Cassie Watters, and we talk about unions. Forming a union, the benefits of having a union, pretty much everything. I really appreciate Cassie for coming on and talking about this. With everything going on in the nation right now, I felt like it was good to have someone on to talk about unions, although it feels like a lot of them are rectifying their strikes. But I feel like this is something that will go on and on and on, so it's good to have this as a base. But yeah, I appreciate Cassie for coming on. Sponsor this week is Feral Giant. Feral Giant is a graphic design, illustration, and social media consultation company based here in Knoxville, Tennessee. So they do work for clients big and small all over the country, all over the globe, in fact. But they also do photography, videography, video editing, and audio editing, website design, SEO, writing, content development. Hell, they'll babysit your kids if it nets them money. So make sure you give them a follow on social media on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Feral Giant. And be sure to give them an email today and hire them for your next project. Without much further ado, here's the episode. How many people I interview. And I was like, where did you go to high school? And they're like, hold up. Before I say where I went to high school, don't judge me, but I went to Farragut. And I was like,
And of course you do.
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah.
I can't tell you. Yeah, if this were Oklahoma City, there's
versions.
It would be so on. Yeah, everywhere.
There was one.
Someone was like, I grew up in Edmond. I'm just like, double thumbs down. It was a suburb then. It's its own city now. It's a different world now. But yeah,
I don't know. It's also gotten weird, and there's a lot of gentrification going on in this neighborhood, where I'm seeing a lot of Teslas, a lot of BMWs.
It's bizarre.
It's
how many Teslas? Yep.
Well, when I was in Boulder, every third car was a Tesla. Mm-hmm. To where my friend and I started making jokes like, "Oh my God, there's a Tesla! Thank God I saw one." I didn't know. Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, so you say Oklahoma City. Is that where you're originally from?
It is.
Oklahoma City.
Born and raised.
And what did your folks do for a living?
My mom was a music teacher in Oklahoma City Public Schools, middle school band, and then beginning band and strings for her last part. And my dad was a cellist in the symphony.
Oh, ooh la la. Okay, so growing up, brothers and sisters?
Just one older brother.
Just one other brother. Did your parents push you all into the arts at all? Like, did they encourage?
I don't feel like they did. I think we were exposed to it, and I took like Suzuki violin at like a tiny age with mixed reviews. So I think when I was like 6, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And they were like, okay. And I played once more in the 5th grade. My brother tried playing cello very briefly in middle school, and I don't think that went well. I don't exactly know all the reasons, but learned a lot of piano, a lot self-taught, but also with lessons. I played the flute in my mom's band.
Okay.
In middle school. But then when I got to high school, I saw what our band was like and the fact that we had a dance team, and that's when I stopped playing an instrument, and I started dancing. At some point I said to my parents, I don't know what prompted this announcement. So like clearly I was like, I'm not going to be a musician. They were like, thank God. Because I was interested in science and sharks, and I was just like, I was like, I'm going to be different.
But also
I said that before the dance team.
Okay.
I was never like, I'm going to be a dancer, because that didn't seem possible. But
I've seen breaking. It's possible.
how does one make a living? You know, are there AP classes in dance? There should have been.
I've
really
got a
should have
friend that
been.
teaches burlesque. And
Nice.
she grew up in ballerina. And she now teaches class in burlesque.
That's
So
awesome.
that
No, you
is-
can make it work, but it's not exactly clear how, I feel
Yeah.
like.
This was also pre-internet. You couldn't Google,
No.
how do I get paid to dance?
Rosie Perez, it was
Yeah.
like the Fly Girls on In Living Color,
Yeah.
Kids Incorporated.
Kids Inc.
These were inspirations, but they
KID.
seemed very like exceptional. Yeah, Janet Jackson.
Kids Incorporated.
Paula
That
Abdul.
is a throwback right
Let's
there.
just talk about dance this whole time.
That's what we're going to talk about. Well, in that vein, I'm about to go see Tony live.
Which show?
Columbia, South Carolina.
But yeah, I loved them. I was really into them in middle school, like especially.
I'm
Raphael
having-
Sadiq, I was like my boyfriend.
Nice. I'm trying to think. Let's see. 2 out of the 4 shows I've got in October are throwbacks. Tony. Well, I guess John Watters technically is a throwback.
Nice.
And Toad the Wet Sprocket. And The Tallest Man on Earth. Now, that is not a throwback. That
Yeah.
is more modern. But seeing Tony.
Tone.
Holy shit, 3 out of the 4 have T's. Start with T. Tallest Man on Earth, Tony. Toad the Wet Sprocket. I will dance more at Tony than I will Toad the Wet Sprocket.
How could you not? So
Yeah.
many jams.
I'm going to break out. I've got a purple sport coat that I bought for the spring formal on March 10th, 2020.
Yes.
And I never got to wear it.
Oh
canceled.
man.
So
And the archives. Nice.
I've gotten to wear it a couple times, but I'm going to break it out for Tony.
Nice.
I feel like that is more.
It sounds like the right thing.
Yeah. Okay, so you were into science and sharks and dance.
Yes.
And so, like, when you were in high school, you were really into science and sharks and stuff. Was
And
there
dance.
thoughts of... And dance. Sorry, I don't mean to leave out dance. You've already said you can't make money in dance, so I'm going to... was the thoughts when you went to college, like, I'm going to be a science major?
Yeah, marine biology. I think my 4th grade teacher was also a big influence. Talked to us, had us read about this woman who became known as the Shark Lady. She was a famous shark researcher, did some groundbreaking shark research. And, you know, I grew up with Jaws, and that in itself, the movie itself, I think had a huge impact on me. And
Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss's character, like, super nerdy but excited about sharks, like, and figuring stuff out. I was really into that, and would always go to the library and get books on great white sharks and or shark attacks.
I think it's also hilarious you're doing all this in almost the most landlocked place
I know.
in this country.
The irony is
Damn near
not
center.
lost on me. I got to go to sea camp, in quotes,
Okay.
in Galveston with some money that my great aunt had left me, and sort of blew my mind. Like, that, seeing what is actually in the ocean, whoo-wee.
Yeah.
Man, oh man, there's a lot. It's not like the lake. It's not like a river. There's a lot going on down there.
Although I feel more comfortable in an ocean than I do a lake because I can see the bottom. Sometimes in the ocean, a lot.
Yes,
better.
but when there's like a dredge and it dredges everything that is on the bottom and then dumps it on the deck and it's all running around.
These are all technical terms.
Lord D. I was like, there are no hills to run for.
Yeah.
And if there were, I would try to run. But I stuck at it. I did go. I was a marine biology major for a year and a half.
Okay. Did you go off to college, or
Oh,
did
yeah.
you stay in Oklahoma?
There was none of that to be found. I'm sure that was another
I don't know.
added reason why I was like, yep, that's what I'm doing. Long Island, New York, Southampton College, part of Long Island University.
Okay. What made you choose Long Island?
Biggest scholarship and marine. It was a marine science school.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would think like Florida or Southern California.
I applied to 2 in Florida. Those were the other 2. But
Yeah.
my brother lived in another part of the island at the time. And
Nice.
I thought it was going to be closer to New York City than it actually was. It was really far.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a car, especially.
Going down the LIE. I know what the LIE is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Probably from a song.
If you had a car, otherwise you'd be taking the LIRR, the Long Island Railroad.
Lur. Okay. New York is. I was looking at going up in December. Looked on because Airbnb is now insane. I looked at a hotel. I was like, that doesn't seem too bad. And then I looked at where it was. I was like, oh, it's 30 blocks north of Harlem. I was like, I've stayed in Harlem before. That's a ways away.
Uh-huh.
Like even on a train, that's it's going to be a haul to get anywhere. But okay, so you go to college there, and you start off in marine biology. So I assume that means you did not finish in marine biology.
I did not.
What made you shift away from marine biology?
I was just talking to someone about this. I went on a trip that was part of our school. Mostly science majors went on it. It was called Seamester. And I was on a traditional wooden schooner, and it was 9 weeks. The fall semester was the one I was on. We started in Boston, went a little bit north, and we went all the way down the eastern seaboard to like North Florida. Went out through the Bahamas to Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and then we flew back.
Okay.
And it was pretty incredible. A few very poignant, Mother Nature.
Yeah.
At the very mercy. If, just saw the tip, like the very edge of a squall, and that was enough to kind of cause just total chaos. But I think it was just going to other places, and especially places like Haiti. I was like, just became really curious. And I think my perception was like my fellow science majors were not as curious about like the people and the conditions they were living in. And so I was like, well, that's unfortunate. But I am. And then I think I just had this shift of like, while I have a scholarship, I don't really want to spend a lot of time in these like stinky labs, taking more and more calculus and chemistry, even though I'm a biology major. And what could I do that I could still graduate on time? And I had tested out some English classes. Also, women's studies had just started as it was. I think it wasn't even quite a minor yet.
Good Lord.
And
that
so
late.
I was and in the 90s.
Yeah.
Sociology and women's studies, I was able to take those classes too. So I was like interested in other stuff, and then realized that's what I wanted to do more than.
And growing up, were your family involved with politics or anything at all?
Yeah, I mean,
Social
not
issues?
yes and no. I think they both went on strike at different times. My mom, I don't remember because I was like 2. The Oklahoma City teachers went on strike, and I think that was the first time she really got involved with her union, but I think it really made a lasting impact on her, and she would talk about things. My dad went on strike when I was about 11 with the symphony, and that was a much bigger deal. They were on strike for over a year. I walked the picket line with them, thought that was fun, but then it seemed really stressful for the family. And my dad started working as their only paid person, like office person, their secretary treasurer during that time, and had to like figure out how to use computers. It's in the late 80s. And, you know, my first job was in there licking envelopes. And I remember I remember little things like we canceled our subscription to the state paper during the strike, which honestly was a terrible rag of a paper owned by the Gaylords. But they were just trashing, you know, the strike on the front page, like greedy, lazy musicians. And I was like, oh, I won't get to read the funnies. Like, why are we canceling? And so that, you know, it was a moment of like, oh, like papers have opinions about things. And like right now, my parents really disagree with the opinion of this paper, their depiction of what's going on. You know, we would talk about stuff. I think we talk more about values than politics, but I feel like a lot of that is very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot to ask this. Did you grow up playing any sports?
Oh.
No.
I played a lot of things on my block with the family across the street and my other neighbors. I would have played probably anything you would have asked me to play. We started a softball team when I was in the 3rd or 4th grade, which was super fun. There were these what I called later like these elite girls softball teams. It was like unclear how anyone even joined them, and they had these like satin jackets they would wear around school. It was very intimidating. And then a young girl in my class, or younger than me, her dad was, I want to say was a teacher. I can't even remember. I think he was one of the teachers, and then one of the girls' dads were like, we're starting a team. So they started Tigerettes.
The Bad News Bears of Oklahoma City.
Which I fucking love that movie.
Yeah.
And the Prairie Queen Elementary. I feel like we were not officially part of the school, but we'll say we were. The Tigerettes, and we were like B division. I eventually got to pitch a game to one of those elite teams, and I walked every single one of them. But I was pretty good at shortstop, very kind of erratic as a pitcher. I went to middle school, and I started playing on the volleyball team, and then this was across town from where we lived. My mom taught in the school, and she was really not interested in staying any later than she had to, so I did not continue to play on that team, which is unfortunate. I helped start the girls soccer team, women's soccer team in my high school when I was a freshman, and played on that for a couple of years, and then the dance team. Yeah.
Okay. I always think it's old school thought process is like, man, I want more kids to get into sports to learn how to lose. So I think learning how to lose is very, very important. And a lot of
very
kids
important.
Are not, a video game you can just respawn. I think that's a term. That is a term.
Foursquare, does that count? We played a lot of Foursquare. And the 50-yard dash, we were constantly trying to see if anyone could beat each other's speed, and that it never changed.
No. Okay. Okay, we'll go back forward to you're in college, you switch your major. Was your major in women's studies?
Literature is what I figured out I could graduate on time with.
Oh, okay.
I think maybe technically I had a minor in women's studies, but I don't think it was official. But yeah.
And what was the thought process with the English degree? Was that you could get a teaching job, or
I thought
it was just
this is what I can
do to graduate.
I can graduate on time. I know I can do this, and I can also take these other subjects like sociology and women's studies.
Okay.
Because there weren't a lot of credits, and that was to me a good thing.
I think, well, Pellissippi did not have minors, but I think if I had a minor, it may have actually been in sociology.
Nice.
Because I took sociology, psychology, sociological problem. class called Sociological Problems and Change.
I like it.
You would take, what the teacher would do is everybody go home and watch the news. And then we'll talk about that for the first 5 minutes of class. And our goal was always to get to like the 30-minute mark of just talking about the news.
Who was the teacher? You remember?
No. Super nice lady. And we ended up talking about all these different things. And she talked about being a movie nerd. And so she brought me movies and I brought her movies. One of the first movies I brought her was Seven, because we were talking about serial killers or something like that.
Wow.
And she brought it back and she was like, "It's very disturbing." And I was like, "Yeah,
Indeed.
it is. Like, that's the point." Okay. Like, I think it shocked her. I was like,
I saw that in a mall in Long Island when I was out there.
Holy hell.
I think it was called in Mattituck. And I maybe never went there again. But.
So one of my buddies, one of my oldest friends, Greg, he and his brother and a bunch of other dudes were going to the movie, and they all wanted to go see Showgirls. And at the same time, Seven was playing. And he always says, "I could have seen Seven. I tried to talk them into going Seven." And I'm sure Greg is listening to this. I bet you didn't talk them into going Seven. You were wanting to go see Jesse's boobs, too. Just like your brother and all the rest of them. He's like, "I still give him hell about that." I was like, I bet you.
They would have never let him hear the end of that.
No.
Yeah, sounds like.
They would have been disturbed and been like, "What the hell, man? We saw I'm trying to remember what that dude said. The dude that's shaking in the towel. We had to see that, and we didn't get to see Jesse's boobs.
Right.
So, what the hell's wrong with you? I don't think I've ever seen Showgirls.
I think I have. I don't think it was very good.
No. Oh, good Lord, no.
Could have been. But
Anyway.
They could have unionized.
Well, I'm kind of surprised to hear that your dad, the symphony, had a union.
Yeah, the American Federation of Musicians.
So it was a national thing. It wasn't just them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Knoxville is part of that, the Symphony Heroes.
Okay.
And actually, I met a man who plays in the symphony here who was taught by someone from UT who had left Oklahoma because of that strike and the way things turned out.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Because they basically had to fold and then reform as a part-time entity, and lots of families packed up and left the state.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And to have that tie to Knoxville, too.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was wild whenever he told me that, and I was like, what?
Okay, so you got this English degree, taking some good classes. What did you do right after college?
Well,
what was the next step?
I did a lot of other things in college that were significant politically for me. I think I got exposed to a lot of things I found interesting. So like feminism and
I've heard of it.
The custodians were privatized, were outsourced when I was there, like sold to a private management company. It was a private university, so they were just so at a small group of people decided to broadcast that and make it known that, this is like what's happening. This is what the administration is saying. But meanwhile, this is really why this is happening. It's very eye-opening. So, the administration, I think, was saying to students like, oh, this is because of cleanliness on campus. And we've had some student complaints, and just kind of like, I don't feel like I've heard any of those. Like, I haven't really noticed the campus being not clean. And then you hear that they're starting to take away certain benefits from the workers, right? And then you realize that is why this is happening. And you were not willing to say that, but luckily there were a few brave people that were. And there was a rally on campus, they said, for the first time since the Vietnam War. And that was exciting. It was like, oh, what's going on? Let me check this out. I ended up becoming student body president that next year. And so I was like, this is something I should know about. And talked to the people at the rally, and then got involved in this coalition to try and bring folks back as college employees.
Okay.
And it worked eventually. A year and a half later, they canceled the contract with the company. But
It's a private company.
yeah. I think that experience and the people who were involved in it and the ways that they helped me understand it was very influential of like, actually, this is our whole economy.
Yeah.
I care a lot about this. I want to figure out how to do something. Yeah.
Okay. Did you intern or anything with any organizations?
No, I think it was just like a few faculty, one in particular who I considered a mentor that really helped like put it in some context and was involved in this coalition as well.
Okay. So you graduate college. Was that the first thing you started looking into as a job, or was it like, oh shit, I just got to get a job?
It was all that. Yeah. And I was like waiting tables at a fancy restaurant where it was sort of mind-boggling that one could make that much money compared to the shitty restaurants I had worked in before. But also it was like, I do not want to keep doing this. This is hurts the soul. And these folks that are doing it, God bless them, they're not having a great time. So anyway, I luckily got offered a job. I moved to the Boston area, Cambridge area. And that same mentor, Corey Dolgan, had moved on to teach sociology at Worcester State College in central Massachusetts and offered me a part-time job just as an admin assistant in his department. And so I moved. And then he introduced me at the same time to some people from a group called Jobs with Justice, which is like a national network of local coalitions of unions and community groups and faith-based groups that care about workers' rights.
That's not something you hear a lot of.
Yeah. I mean, there's been one here in East Tennessee since like the 90s. Since
A faith-based...
Well, it includes like certain denominations and groups that are like Church of the Savior is one. That's like they just actually had some of the McKay's workers talk about their fight for a first contract on Labor Day weekend. It's part of this tradition called Labor in the Pulpit. But that's just like one part of Jobs with Justice.
Okay. So you got that job, you moved to Cambridge. Was all of this like a culture shock, like moving to Long Island and to Boston?
Oh, yeah. I spent the last semester of college in London. I got to use my scholarship to go there. I had wanted to go do a semester at the London School of Economics, but that wasn't going to be possible without like doubling my student loan debt, and I didn't want to do that. So I just hung out and like listened to lectures and sort of did some coursework with this program that I was a part of. And then also learned about, a bunch of new stuff, including the fact that people were going to be protesting at the World Trade Organization meetings in Seattle in November 1999. And so I came back and I moved to Boston and met folks that also knew that and were very much planning to have something happen in Boston right after the first day of the protest in Seattle. And there were unions who were flying people out to be part of this, rally and march in Seattle. Again, this mentor of mine got some fellow faculty to pay for my plane ticket to go out to the protest if I would come back and talk to their classes about it, which was awesome.
Yeah.
So I went
you're not
by
much
myself.
older than the students, and you're
right.
This is what you can do. You can.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that sort of year and a half between that protest and September 11th was extremely exciting and fruitful experience. And I came back. There was a burgeoning network of people that wanted to figure out how to work together, like labor and environment and other folks on how to have a globalization that's not just totally corporate driven.
How's that working out? Sorry. That was too easy. That was an easy layup.
Yeah, no, it was interesting, and we could talk just about that, but a short and intense period.
I totally forgot about the WTO stuff.
Yeah.
It's there's a podcast I listen to.
I spilled on your chair. Sorry.
You're fine. It's fine. They were talking. Was it Fallout Boy just released a new version of "We Didn't Start the Fire"? There's a point to this, I swear. There's a podcast I listened to, and they spent 30 minutes making fun of it. They're like, "What a shoddy, shitty job they did," because they were covering the last 20 years. And so one of the guys on the podcast said, "Screw it, I'm going to write a better one." And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like, I don't know. They mentioned he was talking about when he finished performing it. He was like, "There's so much I left out because so much has happened in that time." He was like, "I could not cram it all in there."
Yeah.
WTO. I forgot about WTO.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There were a few after that, but that was the big one where they didn't see it coming. And then they probably never would be the same way again.
Yeah.
Meaning the state.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm trying to think. Okay. London, Boston, Seattle. Somewhere in here you met Joachim.
Much
Birthday boy
later. Yeah, I
Joachim.
don't know. It feels like much later. Probably in 2006. I moved from Boston in 2007.
Okay.
But yeah.
It just, when you said Boston, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. You knew Joachim from up there.
Yeah.
Birthday boy. Joachim. Okay. Boston, you come back, you tell the kids what happened, the Utes, the youngins, the people 1 or 2 years younger.
There were so many report backs. It became like a whole thing all over town.
Yeah.
And there were lots of people who had been there. And so we kind of had this like panel of people that would go around and talk about it.
So at that point, were you looking at other places where you could go and make an impact? Like
no, I think
that
I
experience?
had started working more with Jobs of Justice, and they had this anonymous donation of Home Depot stock, which funded me and this other woman to coordinate this brand new like Boston Global Action Network. Okay. And I was from the labor side, and she was from the environment side, and just to figure out how to continue to do more of these collaborative actions together and like think about targets. And there was a biotech industry conference that was soon after Seattle happening in downtown Boston, and that was sort of the next big one that we were planning there. And it was an absurd number of cops, and I remember hearing one of these faculty members from Worcester State who lived closer into town was like, I was at the liquor store and I heard a subway cop say like that they had flown in Seattle riot cops to tell them what to do about protests like this. So it was mostly...
Which is a shock because, Boston cops are super cool. They're not racist at all or anything.
It was mostly a lot of hippies. It was really overblown, and it looked really absurd. We marched for like 2 blocks, and then that was because they were just everywhere in this tiny small area called Copley Square. So there was just like month after month there was stuff like that happening, and there was the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund meeting in Washington, D.C. And, at that point, it was like, if we want lots of people to come to these things, it can't just be very confrontational actions as the only plan. If not everyone's down with that or prepared to risk arrest and safety and all these other things. So we were trying to figure out, how do we have a permitted, like, space of a rally and a march where you're actually not trying to shut anything down or get arrested for any reason. You're just trying to protest, like, etc. So lots of navigating and talking with lots of different people and organizations and stuff to make that kind of thing happen. But also really fun and interesting to be part of that. And we ended up in 2000, I think it was 2001, taking 5 buses of people from Boston up to Quebec City to protest the Free Trader, the Americas meeting there. And I believe that was in April. And then, September 11th happened and everything changed as far as all of that went. Like, not as much space to criticize the United States.
I know what you're talking about. It was totally... I'm curious. I thought of another question, but I want to look up something.
Yeah.
To see how close they were to one another. Let's see, April 20th, 1999.
Well, April 20th.
November 30th, December 3rd. Okay. So Columbine happened April 30th.
I was in Prague whenever that happened, and we heard people buzzing about it at this newsstand, and then we went over and saw it, and it was like, wow, and it was bizarre.
I was at Pellissippi walking through the lunchroom where all the TVs were, and it was silent in there. And that's why I was curious. It's like, man, did those two things happen kind of concurrently, and that's why I remember one more than the other.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, April 20th of 2000, no, it was April 16th. There became these annoying, like, jargony acronyms, like, for these protests, and it would be like, the letter of the month and the date. So it was like A16, and it's so cheesy, but that's what I thought you were talking about for a second, but that was in 2000.
Okay.
That was the
one?
World Bank IMF meeting in Washington, D.C.
That's another one. You saying that, I was like, oh, yeah, the World Bank thing. Good Lord. There's been so many big things that have now, so many other things have, I'm going to lean in, I'm going to pull a Sean Pointer when I say this. So many things have trumped them since then. It's like, oh, yeah, that was a thing. I remember that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I don't know. I
mean, there's the whole Iraq war, like, wow.
So I'll tell a little story. So when September 11th happened, I was working at Home Tour, and Dad had called me because he had heard on the radio that a plane had flown into the World Trade Center. He said, turn on TV if you have one. So a woman lived next door. She brought one of those boom boxes with the little 4-inch TV in it over, plugged it in. We turned it on, and within 10 seconds, the second plane flew. I've heard so many people tell the story of, I turned on the TV and saw the second plane.
Same.
Like how insane that is almost all of our collective experience. But then we were in a house, so I would go downstairs and tell the people who worked downstairs. I would keep them updated what was going on. And finally at lunchtime, one of the guys said, screw it. He drove to Walmart, bought a 13-inch TV, and just set it down there. He's like, no, this is something is happening, and I can't wait on you for updates. I was like, okay. So I ended up sitting down there, and for that full week, like, we didn't get a lot of work done. I sat down in his office, the accountant's office, watching the TV the whole week, debating if I should sign up for the military.
Wow.
Like, and it got towards the end of the week, I was like, I'm not going to do it because I have a little sister who is at that point 11. I was like, I'm not going to join because I don't want to leave her, and I'm worried we will not, and I'm not bullshitting you when I say this, we will not attack the people who actually did this. That was my thought. I was like, I saw how fucked up everything was. And I was like, nope, we're not going to go after the people who did this. We'll do something else. And if we start anything, it'll be 2 or 3 years from now. It won't be right now. And the fact that I ended up being right was kind of fucking wild. Not that that sounds fun. That's the worst humble brag ever. but it was. I remember sitting, but I think a lot of those things have eclipsed World Bank, WTO.
Oh, yeah, I mean...
Because those were so far removed from me working at a magazine publication, real estate magazine publication, not a news magazine publication in East Tennessee, just worrying about making money, trying to pay my bills. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. You go down to the World Bank? No?
Yeah, I went to Quebec City, and then, after September 11th, it was just like, okay, none of that is what it was. And so, but, there's still a lot going on with workers in America. And so there was a huge, 50,000 person janitor strike in Boston, the Justice for Janitors campaign, that we were doing a lot of support work with, and among other things. And then, I left there and I got a job at the Harvard School of Public Health as a staff person. And they had a union. They had organized in the late 80s, and there was 6,000 clerical and technical employees that make Harvard, all of Harvard run. This was a graduate school. It was on the Boston side, and I was just working in a couple different programs.
Okay. So you're doing that, and
because of the union, I got to take the 6 credits that I left college short of 7 years prior, and for $40 a class. Night
was
school.
This at Harvard?
Yeah, at the extension school.
Okay.
Which is not Harvard, but it's whatever. It's on the campus.
I got a degree from Harvard. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, it's not how it works. Just transferred it back.
I'm trying.
Transferred it back, but it's actually, it was like, if I don't do this now, if it's this easy, I'm never going to do it. And that would be silly, because I have this opportunity to pay for a class for $40.
That's nuts.
That's how I got my degree 7 years after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it when you get it.
Yeah.
I all of us in the family graduated from Fulton. The person that graduated before me was my grandmother going back to get her GED, I think sometime in the 80s.
That's badass.
Which I think is hilarious. It's like, the most recent graduate is the matriarch of the entire family.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she's the one who got her GED. And are you cold? I'm realizing
no,
this is my house.
I also sweat a lot. Okay. Sometimes my hands get cold.
Okay.
And now everybody knows I sweat a lot. Yeah.
Oh, well, they've heard me talk about it. You know me. I wear shorts in the wintertime. Look who you're talking to. You're in the right place. So you're there in Boston doing that, going to school, getting your degree. Was the thought about establishing something there, a life there, or did you I need to move on to
I had a great time there. I lived with my best friend for 7 years, met a lot of great people. It never felt comfortable or familiar or like home.
Okay.
I didn't have any family anywhere near, and it's a hard place I feel like someone from the lower latitudes, I don't know, that are used to people being friendly on the streets and with strangers. And it was just really hard on the soul for me, always there. Once you get past that, people are great. But it was a grind. And so as soon as there was an opportunity, I met someone. He had gone to college at Warren Wilson in Western North Carolina. And and had bought a house in Asheville, but couldn't keep tenants in it. Turns out this is Joachim's best friend, Elam. Okay. And so he was moving to Asheville, and I decided I would go with him.
This is 2007?
Yeah.
Oh, man. People don't understand what Asheville was like before.
Well, he went to college there in the 90s, so he really saw that area before a lot happened.
So another story, because I can't not tell stories on this. I think it's 03, 04, I debated moving to Asheville. I went over to visit. It was the first time I had taken a trip on my own as an adult. Uh-huh. And I was like, I'm going to just go over to Asheville because I always want to see Biltmore Estate. I'd went once when I was in the 8th grade, but I was young and didn't understand it. But I knew I loved it and knew the area was beautiful. I wanted to go over and see. And it was cheap. It was cheap to go and stay in Asheville back then. $35 to stay in a hotel on Patton Street.
There you go.
And now that same shitbag hotel is like
I might know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like $260 a night. It's like you're out of your mind. Like I've literally peeled wallpaper off the wall in this place. But I debated moving there, but did not move there because there was not enough business. As a graphic designer, I looked up, there were only 2 agencies in town, and that, no offense if they listen to this. Actually, I don't give a shit. They both sucked. They were not good. And I was like, no, I don't want to move it. There's not enough business. I would love to do it.
Yeah.
But it was a craft town, mountain town.
Yeah, and resort, sort of, the resort industry. So if you were in the service industry, like you worked at the Biltmore, Grove Park, this is one thing. There was a small, campus there. It took me 3 months to find 3 or 4 months to find a full-time job with benefits, like salary with benefits.
Wow.
And coming from the Boston, Cambridge area, that was a shock. That it took that long.
Was a lot different down there too.
And just not, there is a lot of reasons, I think, why there aren't higher paying jobs in the South, with good benefits. And one of them is there aren't as many unions.
Oh.
And there aren't as many union members in those unions as there are in the Northeast. And that really raises the floor for everyone.
Yeah.
Raises the standards for everyone.
Although we'll get into it. It's been interesting watching this resurgence of Teamsters, knowing how it ended when my dad retired and how not good the Teamsters were for him at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing this change.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened, if it was an org change or what. But
definitely leader change.
Yeah. But it was his last maybe like 5 to 10 years of working. It almost felt like the Teamsters were working against the workers.
Yeah, no, that's real.
Because it was like, hey, we I'll go ahead and do it here. We negotiated. Everybody's going to have to take a pay cut. Like, it was shit like that, to where he's like, wait, you did what?
Yeah.
You got rid of our Wait, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, he and Mom were people who were on picket lines in the freezing cold, in the brutal summers. Mm-hmm. And he had always said the one thing he regretted, now this was in the 90s, he's like, the one thing I regretted being a truck driver is that I didn't go somewhere where I could have been a Teamster earlier, because he could have retired earlier.
Yeah. But
he was like, that was his biggest regret in work.
Yeah.
But also it's Dad, and I can tell 50 bazillion dad stories of, I'm sure the Teamster saved his ass, because he was like, well, this dumb son of a bitch over here, like, he got called into the GM's office at the last place he worked a lot, because they would bring in terminal managers that were like 25-year-old punk-ass kids from college going, I'm going to change the game. And he would get in fights with them and yell at them about how stupid they were. Because he had been working as a truck driver longer than they had been alive.
Yep.
And he told me stories about how they screwed up. And they would not admit they screwed up. And
sure.
So he would get called into the GM's office, and they're like, now, Ronnie, he's like, well, if this dumb son of a bitch knew what the hell he was doing and listened to us, we would... And I was like, I bet Teamster saved his ass more times than not.
Probably.
From that, yeah. Okay, so moved down to North Carolina. You finally found a job. Was it in union organizing, or was it something completely different?
I literally wanted, almost any job that was salary with benefits. It was like a glorified secretary position with the Planned Parenthood affiliate in town.
Okay.
So I supported these 2 like VPs on the administrative end of Planned Parenthood, and like downstairs was a clinic. Yeah. So it was just a lot of like forms and PDFs and meeting notes and stuff like that.
Was it killing you a little bit?
A little bit.
Planned Parenthood, so it's...
It was. No, it was killing me a little bit. Ultimately, on the day I gave my notice, I got given a job posting from the same mentor who I've been talking about a community organization in Tennessee. And I had been wanting to get back to that. And I did want to do that type of work again, and specifically with unions, but I was kind of open to other things too. And on the day that I got the job, on the day I gave my notice at Planned Parenthood, the place burned down.
Oh, shit.
And it was not arson. It was a unfortunate, like, malfunction of the, heater system. Like...
That's wild.
Yeah, it was. It was not a good time to give some bad news.
Yeah. Ooh, this sucks. Also, here you go. Sorry. I'm out.
Yeah.
Wait. I'm out.
I was able to work from home for the last, whatever it was, month, and do a bunch of changing PDF forms for them as my last hurrah. So I still had something to contribute, but felt really bad for them.
So we'll go backwards a little bit before we jump forward to Tennessee. Did you enjoy moving from more fast-paced nature of Boston somewhere like North Carolina?
I definitely did. I think that there were a lot of things about Asheville too, though, that I found lacking and not my thing. And so when I came to Knoxville, it was immediately more attractive. And I think part of that was like a visible industrial past is how I have put it. Like, I know that Asheville has that too. It's just not as visible. And it seemed like their tourism office is like killing it. Like the way they sell that city is incredible. But to me, it didn't feel great living there. It felt like a destination, not a place that you live.
What is it? Water that's a mile wide but only an inch deep kind of thing.
Like it's, obviously gorgeous all around there. And I definitely enjoyed the people willing to talk to you, fucking just waving was such an amazing feeling.
I finally settled on
coming from New England
term that I'm going to call big guy privilege. Is that I understand I walk around the world with a lot of big guy privilege. And I think you add Southern on top of that. Because, again, I can't hear my accent. Because I know people from Maynardville where I need subtitles when they talk to me. So when I'm up north or in Chicago or in San Francisco and I start talking to people because I can talk to a wall and I feel comfortable because I'm a big dude and I don't have a lot of fear of anything. But I recognize that. I understand that. So I've not had much issue with people not because I'm like, how y'all doing? Like I'll dip into a deeper Southern accent and people are usually pretty nice.
Have you been to New England?
I've been to Boston. Boston was, I was there for a conference. I got to see one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life there. Which, if you can see that little ping pong ball up there, signed by Hilary Hahn and Harushka, or I can't pronounce his name, is this weird piano player. I think he just won an Oscar. He just won an Oscar this past year.
Oh, wow.
For film score. But he and Hilary Hahn played at the museum where there was an amphitheater where you just, all glass, you looked out on the bay.
Nice.
And I got to see them perform there. And it was insane. And he had put ping pong balls on his piano. And at the end, he picked them off and threw them. And my buddy is with me, went over and I was like, oh, damn, I need to grab that. And my friend just got up in the middle of them finishing the song, went over and grabbed it and handed it to me. So I went up to him afterwards. I was like, I bought the vinyl. And I was like, do you want this back? And she laughed. And he was like, oh, no, you're good. And I was like, will you sign it? And she was like, yeah, you sign it. And he signed it. And I was like, no, you signed it to Hillary. And she was like, oh, okay. And she signed it. And so I had that. Everybody was nice there. Went to a baseball game. That was... was walking to the baseball stadium. They were playing the Braves. some dudes were ahead of me, and I guess they did not like that I was following them. But they were all in Braves jerseys.
Oh.
And so they start talking to me, and they're like, "Oh, you're from South, so you're a Braves fan." I was like, "No, I'm a Dodgers fan." They're like, "Why are you a Dodgers fan?" I was like, "Because I'm a Dodgers fan." And they're like, "But you're from the South." I was like, "I'm a Dodger. You're going to root for the Braves tonight?" "No, I'm good. I want to root for both of them because I don't give a shit." So I go. I'm sitting in my seat. These two couples come up there. Chris was his name. I still have it in my notes somewhere. He talked at me. He came up there like third inning, sat down. All four of them were drunk as shit. And he talked, and he was like, "You got to go to Preza. You got to go to Preza." I think it's called Preza. I've got it in my notes. "You got to go Preza. Tell him Chris," that's why I have his name, "sent you." He's like, "You got to go to Preza." I was like, all right, man. And then they left 2 innings later and went out and got more drunk, came back up there, and he kept talking to me even more. That's what I say. They were nice to me. He was giving me a restaurant recommendation.
Yeah.
And then they screwed off like 6th inning, and I'm sitting there like, why did you all even come to the game?
That's hilarious.
What a waste. That stadium made me feel like a giant. Because walking through the tunnel and everything, it was like down to here. The seats were not
Pretty
made for
small.
me.
Yeah.
Not made for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I walked around. I think I was at the conference so much.
Yeah.
I probably didn't experience. I did get to see Nick Swartzen. Mm-hmm. Do you know who that is? He was. I think he's from around there. But he was in a restaurant. And we walked in, and the two people I was with did not know. They're older than me. They do not know who he was. And I looked at him. And I kind of cocked my head, and I nodded at him, and he nodded at me, and he was with his like bodyguard.
Nice.
And they sat us right next to him, so I'm trying to explain who Nick Swartzen is without going, "That's Nick Swartzen." I should have just said, "Hey, man," because we were in the side of a restaurant where no one else was there.
Oh.
And I was like, I should have just went, "Guys, I'll be back. I'm gonna go over here and sit with Nick Swartzen." This age, Jody would totally get up and go over and do that. But no, everybody was pretty nice. There was a very nice lady at the airport that they checked you in like on the road in front of. It was kind of weird. Like you didn't go inside, and she was checking me in, and she looked at me and she said, "Oh no, honey," and she gave me an exit room. So everyone was very nice to me in Boston.
No, that's great. No, they are nice. It's the whole stranger waving thing. You know what I like about New York by comparison is like they're not going to be nice, but they are going to fucking talk.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference to me.
So one of the early episodes of this podcast is I had just went on a road trip to Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago. And I told Sean, I was like, there's a weird thing. I'm going to be very sexist when I say this. There's a very weird thing about how dudes in cigar shops and bars can easily make friends. That it's just... You
know, I find all those cities totally fine to be in and interact in. There's something about...
I've been in New York. Like I was at a cigar shop in New York. I had a dude sit next to me that within 3 minutes he wanted to share his dissertation for his PhD. He was a violin. No, not violin. He played in a jazz group, and he was like, "We're playing tonight at 2 a.m. in Brooklyn." I was like, "Dude, I leave on a plane in Newark at 6 a.m. I ain't going to have time to go to Brooklyn." But thank you. Thank you for them. And then I went over and sat with two old head dudes, and they were telling me about the difference in restrictions on smoking in like new buildings or where one of them lived in the Bronx, how they were trying to crack down on him just smoking in his backyard. So I had this long discussion where I essentially talked at Sean, God love Sean, poor Sean, about how it's like, it is weird that like I'm in Detroit.
Has Sean been on this podcast?
Yeah, he's been on here like 4 times.
I gotta go listen.
Yeah. Very early. That was one of the early ones where you can just hear us sitting on the porch at Quincy Avenue, which was awesome.
Nice.
Like sitting there chatting, me talking at him. He was on the one about art. He was on one of the ones about photography. He was on one where he talked about Marvel movies where he and Jason just gave me shit the entire time. Like, That's when my AC was out and we sat out there and it was still like 80 degrees at 9 o'clock at night and they got really drunk. Shocker. And gave me shit the whole time. We talked about the Marvel movies. But anyway, when I was in Detroit, I went to the baseball game because I'm trying to go to all the stadiums.
I've been to a baseball game there, yeah.
It's one of the best stadiums I've ever been to.
Yeah.
The Boston one is still number one. Like, it just because of the history and everything. But I go to a cigar shop afterwards, and you'll hear that story on there because it's funny.
Okay.
About the bartender thinking that I was her boyfriend. I was like, thank you, but no, I'm not him. And then some dude was sitting next to me, some older dude, and he was asleep. And I was looking at his cigar going, oh, shit, is he going to burn this place down? It's like I got to, like, cough or something to get him to wake up before that thing burns something. And we were watching the TV. He woke up, he looked at TV, and there had been a big melee at that game, and they almost couldn't finish it from how many people, and I'll swear I'll get us back on topic. That's the rule I forgot. I swear to God I'll get us back on topic. They almost weren't able to finish the game. That's how many players got ejected.
Wow.
And he was like, yeah, man, that was crazy. I was like, wait, you were there too? And we just sat there and started chit-chatting about baseball and about the game. And this was a dude, like a mid-50s, early 60s black dude in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And we're just sitting there chopping it up.
Yeah.
Talking. I was like, it is a weird thing about, like, but now I'm like, I don't know if it's the big guy confidence thing or I don't know. Or if I can just talk to a wall. I'm my father's son and I can talk to a wall.
Those are also, like, I think, fairly working class cities that people should be able to talk to one another in.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I don't know, like big tech places.
But well, hell, you know me. I got more female friends than male friends. And I know a lot of my female friends were like, we would not feel comfortable. I was like, I understand. I totally understand.
I feel comfortable.
Yeah. Well, I've got one friend who fussed at me. She's like, I cannot walk through the old city by myself at night. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's why when we go down there, I walk you to your car because I was taught that.
Yeah.
That if just the optics of you and I walking next to one another, we're probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're in Asheville. You had an opportunity. The opportunity was in Tennessee?
In Knoxville.
In Knoxville. Okay. And what was that opportunity?
There was a community organization that at that time was called Save Our Cumberland Mountains, known by its acronym as SOCM.
Yeah.
It started in like 5 coalfield counties in East Tennessee in 72. Their office at that time was in Lake City. What was called Lake City at that time, which used to be Coal Creek, is now Rocky Top.
Insert Rocky Top right here. Ding, 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 ding.
They were going through a lot of changes. They were trying to grow and evolve and change the name, and the director was going to be stepping down soon, like the founding director kind of. So they created a position that was a lead organizer / assistant director to help with that kind of transition.
Were they doing, what's it called, mountaintopping?
Yeah, they were fighting mountaintop removal as one of their main issues. People got involved for a lot of reasons initially, to have a voice in what was happening on their land and with the minerals that were under the ground on their land and what would happen to the water they drank and the air and all that.
They didn't want to be able to light their tap water on fire. Mm-hmm. Good Lord. Okay. So you got involved with that. Somebody passed that along to you. Somebody's like, hey, this is an interesting opportunity.
Yeah.
Had you been to Knoxville before?
Never. Well, I think I technically drove through here on the way to college.
Okay.
On I-40 from Oklahoma City. And
really,
I do not think we stopped here, but I think we must have come through.
Okay. Side note, I was just in Columbus. I had a lift, and the dude could not stop talking to me. When he asked where I was from, I said Tennessee, Knoxville. He's like, yeah, man, Nashville, man. It's just, and all he did was talk to me about Nashville. I was like, dude, we have some other good cities in Tennessee. Memphis is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And Knoxville's pretty great. And Chattanooga's pretty great. And there's a lot of other cities. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but man, Nashville is just, I was like, cool. How much longer is this? Wasn't there an option on the app to say, please don't talk to me? He was from Florida.
Oh,
he was,
dear.
Yeah. He's like, I think I've driven through Knoxville. That's what made me
Yeah.
remind that. I was like, thanks.
People say that about Oklahoma City all the time. I mean, it is also on I-40.
Yeah. On the way to Colorado. So, yeah. I can see that.
Sweet.
Okay. So you come to Knoxville. Had Joaquin moved down by then?
No, he hadn't been here yet. I mean,
Okay.
we didn't live here yet, so he wouldn't have had a reason
Okay.
to come and visit yet.
I wasn't
But,
curious. I wasn't sure about that timeline.
Yeah.
So moved to Knoxville
In 08.
in 08. You're working for Sockham. Are you mainly out in like that area or?
Yeah, so they had chapters all over, not all over, but in pretty rural areas. And then we're starting one and trying to start an office in Jackson, Tennessee as well. There were a lot of meetings about this whole transformation and trying to come up with a strategic plan about it and changing the brand, name, like mission statement, all of the above. So we met a lot in various places like Monteagle, Tennessee and Lebanon, Tennessee, and just a lot of discussion, which was challenging, but is also, I think, a testament to just, I mean, they are very serious about member input and democratic decision making. And so I learned a lot about how to lobby with regular everyday people at the state capitol. And I learned a lot.
Because you were in the South, were you seeing more pushback on unions or organizing or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Like, I think when I worked there, that's whenever the organization Acorn came under attack and was, like, surveilled and ultimately went under. And, you know, there's a long tradition there that was a similar tradition to, I think, Sockham's history with just, you know, grassroots community organizing. And Obama, you know, had just started his first term. When I moved here, everyone started attacking community organizers because he had been one, you know, like the Tea Party started happening, like, and then, you know, then we hit 2012 and everything was nutty. Like the backlash and the redness that resulted from that, you know, state election and many others. We're still living in it.
Oh God. Okay. Thanks. I'm gonna go get a drink. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I need a drink.
Get me one too.
Yeah. I can't go down that rabbit hole. I've gotten on this. I've been on this
but
podcast.
I think it's like
getting on my soapbox.
It's an interesting thing to have been here in a state like this, and then, yeah, like Tennessee was not like it is now.
No.
Until then.
Because it's weird if you looked at an electoral map in 08. Mm-hmm. Memphis, Nashville, Knoxville, and Chattanooga were a lot more blue with purple. Mm-hmm. And now when you look at it, it's like purple maybe. And
I think the statistic was, no, that's what it was. It was the 2010 midterms.
Oh yeah.
That's when the backlash happened. And so 4 states, I think, went more red than they had been since Reconstruction, and we were one of them.
Does not shock me.
No.
Not at all. And now with gerrymandering, it's only going to get,
well, that's always been around. But
yeah.
When you have trifecta control, you can do a lot more.
I think the gerrymandering, I did not realize how bad it had gotten in the state until the stuff happened with Jones, the Tennessee 3.
Yeah.
And I saw the thing. I was like, wait, hold up. And I looked at it. I was like, oh, this has gotten a lot worse than I had thought it was. Mm-hmm. This was worse than I thought it was. I
mean, I think both parties take advantage of it because
Yeah.
you can. But when you're in power for that long, you can
Yeah.
take more advantage.
Yeah.
But
Won't
yeah.
go down that rabbit hole either. Good Lord. Are you finding it over time and all your years doing this and experience, is it easier or harder to pitch people unions?
Well, right. I don't know. I don't see a huge difference
Okay.
right now. I think it's nice when you have more references to point to that are positive, and I don't actually refer to polls very often, but like when a movement is really visible in the public eye, like Starbucks Workers United,
Auto workers.
the Amazon workers who won in New York. Obviously, they didn't win in Alabama, but they did win miraculously in New York. And then the Teamsters and now the auto workers. I think I would hesitate to bring up things like strikes as like a entryway to someone. I don't know, unless they bring it up.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a 60-year plus class war on unions and workers.
Yeah.
And one of the things in that propaganda is like violent strikes, like, and so, which was not either of my parents' experience nor mine growing up.
Yeah.
But like, that's just out there. So you just, to me, it's like organizing is a lot of listening actually, and figuring out what someone cares about. So you want to get them talking more.
Okay. So here are some I actually thought through some questions. So these are very technical questions. Not used to this on the podcast. I'm used to, why'd you get into art? How do workers go about getting union representation if they want it?
So they build a structure with their coworkers and educate themselves on the process, so that they can then educate and move a majority of their coworkers.
Okay.
And then they can request to be recognized voluntarily by their employer if they can prove majority support, like cards. The employer can say, okay, we recognize you. And that gets verified and certified by the National Labor Relations Board, and then they move into bargaining. That is extremely rare. Most of the time, an employer denies a request for voluntary recognition, at which point, and the workers don't have to go to that step, but they can file a petition to have an election with the National Labor Relations Board, which is the government body that enforces the National Labor Relations Act, which covers all the private sector.
Okay.
And so here we're talking about private sector employees. Excluded from that law are agricultural workers, domestic workers, and all public employees. And so states decide whether or not public employees have any of these rights.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is why post Jim Crow, Civil War jobs, federal jobs, and other public jobs are desegregated legally. You see states clamp down on whether those people have collective bargaining rights.
Wow. Oh, God. Because all that's flashing through my head is Lee and how big of a jackass he is.
Yeah, but this has been the case, since the 70s.
I know that, but I think it's more in recent memory, everything he's doing.
Sure.
In the last,
it's all part of it, yeah.
3 months of all this stuff. So I had Andrea Menendez, the teacher, on to talk about like charter schools and stuff like that. And everything that's going on with that, and the teachers' unions fighting against that. And
yeah.
It's
It's a lot. So just public education by
Yeah.
itself is it's a whole deal.
This anytime, so like something that's happened, like let's say in the last month. So Lee pushed through, I can't remember if he got it approved or not, $1.4 billion to build a toll road in Nashville or to Nashville. And then today he said he was going to turn down $1.8 billion for education from the government. And anytime I talk to people about stuff like that, I'm like, it's who is lining his pockets. It's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It has nothing to do with his morals or his values or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's who's putting money in his pockets.
Oh, yeah.
The people building the toll roads, wanting to build the toll roads, they're putting money in his pockets.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and the people wanting to fight against government support, air quotes,
Mm-hmm.
are also putting money in his pockets.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, and
Well, they have money to make. If they could privatize all of public services, which includes public education, they can take all those public dollars and just literally move them over to their pockets to then become profit.
Because I've talked a lot about how bad the roads are now and how it's insane driving down the interstate. Like when we had a bad rain and then 640, Dad was like, I counted 12 people on the side of the road that had blown tires because the roads are so bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so you're saying we can spend $1.4 billion for a stupid toll road, but we can't spend half of that just fixing the roads.
Right.
It's like, this is the dumbest. That's why I say I can't get on my soapbox, because it's dumb beyond comprehension.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
To where it feels like it's making me dumber. But like,
it's not, though. It's not dumb, right? I mean, it is very upsetting.
Yeah.
Somebody's making out, though.
And it's all so obvious. Like, I think that's another thing that's changes. They're not trying to hide it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're not deflecting. They're just like, no, this is what we're doing.
Well, they have gained a lot of power.
Yeah.
In recent years.
God, this is fucking depressing. Damn it, Cassie.
What else you got? Give me some more questions.
I'm trying to decide if we should go back and actually go into let's go back to the job history. Then we'll go on to these questions. I realized I was like, man, I may have left people hanging because we were in 2011 and you were working for Sockham, which I did look. They're still using the same logo.
It's not the same logo.
Cooper Black. It's the typeface. I know the typeface.
Yeah, they kept certain elements. Yeah. You would have appreciated their deliberations about all that.
Oh my God.
It was intense.
Okay, so you're working for them. Are you kind of traveling and getting to see a lot of East? Because you said they had offices.
It wasn't just East Tennessee. I mean, it was Middle and West to some extent.
Oh, okay. But it was Tennessee. It wasn't
it was
Eastern
just Tennessee.
Kentucky
I mean, we had partner organizations, so I had been to Kentucky to meet with some of them. But yeah,
because I had to imagine they're dealing with the same issues.
They actually had an organization start modeling itself after Sockham, like in the early '80s, called Kentuckians for the Commonwealth. KFTC.
Okay.
And so they were a longtime partner, and then it became sort of like this, we could learn from you guys now. You know?
Okay, so you're working for Sockham. How long did you work for them?
About 3.5 years.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was the decision on, did you leave them? Did it get phased out?
No, I left when there was a position that came open to work as an organizer with United Campus Workers, which is part of the national union that I work for now, CWA, Communications Workers of America.
United Campus Workers and CWA?
United Campus Workers is affiliated with CWA and is part of their public sector for short, but the long acronym is Public Healthcare and Education Workers. There's a sector of CWA.
Am I thinking of the wrong thing? Because Mom was a CWA member, but I thought it was communications.
So the umbrella union, the national union, is CWA, Communications Workers of America.
One of my neighbors up here has one of those sun blocker things in the front window, and
They
it's
probably work at McKay's.
it's two
It is. It's Lucy and Jason Roller.
Oh,
They both work at
two
McKay's.
CWA, and every time I see it, I was like, oh, I know CWA.
That's right. That's
'Cause
part
that's
of
what
their
Mom
first
was.
contract campaign is on bargaining days. They come and park together and put that in their windshield.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you had an opportunity to work for campus, and so campus like University of Tennessee campus.
So United Campus Workers is statewide. And
But I'm going towards that's a public. Isn't that public?
it is. So those are state workers. So
Okay.
moving into the public sector and learning about all this stuff that I had no idea about how the laws are different and they don't have any, they don't have a lot of the same rights, at least not on paper. They still have constitutional rights. Like there's a lot of history that is bound up in it, both state and national.
Do you find?
I know way more than I should about all that.
Well,
Some real tedious
people working
stuff.
in those jobs sometimes are people who, because growing up it was a thing of like get a government job because it's a good steady job, like working at the post office or something. So are there a lot of people that you go and talk to there that don't want to upset the apple cart, don't want to screw up a job they've had for a
It's
bit?
very complex.
Yeah.
It's very complex. It depends on the person and the type of job. Like faculty are paid quite differently than staff, for instance, and there's lots of levels within each of those. But if somebody ever had an experience with a union, so the public sector, there was a wave of union organizing that happened in the 60s and 70s, and then there was a backlash. And so many states, ours included, had the idea to, restrict rights legally on paper and set up an association to take the place of a union that's actually run by management.
Of course
So
it is.
the Tennessee State Employees Association is an example of one of those entities. And
It sounds very nice. It sounds official.
sounds like it might even could be a union. Like
They may use Cooper Black too on their. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Yeah, and it really fooled a lot of people. Not everyone, but I think it also was meant to just scare and divide people and make them not want to actually ask for something real or what they deserved. And but it would depend on who you were talking to and what part of the state where they had any idea who that was. So it all depended, on who you were talking to about that.
And like, I'm trying to think how to form this question. Was there any pushback because you weren't Southern? Like,
Oh yeah, I mean, I think because I'm actually from Oklahoma, like I'm not from, Long Island or Boston.
yeah,
I don't sound like it, but I'm also not from Tennessee.
Yeah.
I could tell people I was from Oklahoma. I could tell people I worked on a campus with a union in Massachusetts. I think it's like, just how do you relate to people and like get them to start talking about themselves. And I think I'm decent at that.
yeah.
And, and not being from the North is probably a good thing. In terms of not talking at people
California.
a lot.
I hear a lot of California slander now.
Not talking at people. Like, I can't stand that.
Yeah. Okay. And you said you're still with that organization, but your role is switched now?
Right. So it's hard to explain in a way that makes sense.
We'll
but
get
like,
into it in like hour 4.
the local was a statewide local.
Okay.
It's one local that's part of both a district and a national union. It's part of a district, it's part of a sector, and it's part of a national union.
Okay.
The district is the Southeast and Puerto Rico.
Okay.
And then obviously the national is the United States and Canada. It's international, but and so I kind of transitioned into like a district, and then now I'm sort of in this hybrid. It's bizarre. So then I worked for the national. I've never moved, but my role changed a lot, and I started going all around the region and working with lots of different employees and different employers. And so now my role is organizing coordinator for this district, and it's kind of a partnership with the national, but I go all around the district.
Okay. And your district includes Puerto Rico.
It does. The 9 states.
If you ever need to go, I know you don't need help with safety, but if you ever need a body man
good to know.
make sure you're okay.
Appreciate that.
I will take one for the team and go to Puerto Rico.
Appreciate that.
I will volunteer. That's why, like, what is the in this new role, what's the furthest distance you've had to travel for this?
Oh, probably to like
Montgomery, Alabama.
Orlando. I mean, and Hattiesburg, but that's like 8 hours actually.
Yeah. Hattiesburg is 8
Isn't
hours?
that crazy?
That is weird.
Yeah.
Well, anytime I think of, because of North Carolina, anytime I look and see a show in like Durham or Raleigh, I'm like, that's not that far away. Yeah, it is.
It is.
That's a haul.
It's a haul.
That is a haul.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can do, no.
No.
You're going to have to stay there that night. That's not going to, I can't make it to Atlanta and back anymore. I've aged out of that. I still go to Nashville and back for shows and get made fun of for that. I've made that drive enough. I can handle that, but Atlanta is too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. So you have traveled more. Do you like the traveling more?
I like it and I don't. It's like, it's interesting. I prefer to drive than fly. And sometimes I like driving. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. Okay. I'm trying to think if I have any more questions on the new role. No? I think we're good on that. We'll go with the technical. We'll go back into the technical questions. Can workers be fired for trying to organize a union?
Not legally.
Are there workarounds?
No, it's
that people
just
try to get away
employers bend and break the law all the time.
Yeah.
And so anyone like collective or protected concerted activity is part of the National Labor Relations Act for private sector employees.
Okay.
And so an employer cannot legally retaliate for that activity. If you're just talking about it by yourself, that is not concerted. It's not with others.
Yeah.
That's not the same. That's not as protected. But if you are actually doing that with coworkers.
Like the McKays instance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like where they all got together. How many McKays are there?
Between 55 and 60 just at this one store, including all the part-time. There's 5 stores total.
So is the union they're trying to form, is that only the Knoxville? Yeah. Oh, it is only the Knoxville.
And they did form it. They're just now trying to get their first contract.
Okay. I didn't realize it was just at the Knoxville one. I figured it was at all of them.
It's not the same, but like if you think about Starbucks, it's like individual stores organizing.
But can them doing it in Knoxville light a fire to the one in Nashville? I think or Chattanooga? Both,
and then there's 2 in North Carolina.
Okay. I'm thinking the one in, I think it's Chattanooga that it's on right off the interstate. So I think it's when I passed it the first time, I was like, wait, there's another McKay's?
Right.
I had no idea. Because I'm used to the old McKay's on Kingston Pike and the old Quincy's or Raddy's or whatever the hell that place was. Not Raddy's. Raddy's is a liquor store. Tells you where my brain's at. What was that? Rafferty's or something like that. Do you remember?
I don't know it then. No, it was before my time. So, I heard people talk about it.
In that Bearden area, it was like an old Quincy's Steakhouse thing. That's where I spent lots of time, lots of money in that McKay's. Yeah. Yeah, their first organizational effort should be getting a light put in. That's a shit show. That's from somebody going there but I can't imagine how many employees are late because they can't turn left into that damn place. Can workers be forced to join a union?
No.
So if like 3 people at McKay's are like, I don't want to be a part of this, they can say no.
Oh, yeah. So in a right to work state, which is over half the country now, that's the name of the law. It's a very interesting name. All it means is if you go to work somewhere where the workers there have elected and won a union, you do not have to join or pay dues to that union. Okay. You can reap all the benefits of any contract they win. You have to be represented if you request it. If you're not a member, at least in our union, you don't get to vote on things. So you don't vote up or down on a contract. You don't help elect local officers or a bargaining team, things like that. So if you want a voice in the union, you should join, but there's no obligation to join. You still get all the benefits.
You just beat me to one of my questions, which was...
But when I lived in Massachusetts and I went to work at the Harvard School of Public Health, I was automatically a member. They call that closed shop.
And how many states are that way?
So I think right to work, it's about half and half. I think right to work has a few more now.
One of the questions I had was, what's the difference between being a union member and just being represented? So you answered that.
Mm-hmm. One is paid dues, right? You could also choose to be active, and that's what makes a strong union. But if you don't join or pay dues, you can demand representation. You're not contributing anything, and you don't vote on anything.
You saying that reminded me, Dad and the Teamsters, whenever they need like shirts printed or any printing done, there was only like 2 or 3 places in town that were union organized printers. And
you could have the union bug on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which one of them was literally called Union Printers.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have to be a full-time employee to be in a union?
No. So if you're a contractor, if you're an independent contractor, there's things about that. But other than that, when workers decide to form a union and they file a petition to have an election, there's a process where you have to agree. The employer has to agree on what the bargaining unit will be. Mm-hmm. So the workers themselves could say, we want to include all full and part-time, or they could say, we only want to include all full-time. There's a back and forth. The employer sometimes argues about it and tries things that might water down the support and include a bunch of other people that you maybe weren't thinking about, or exclude a bunch of people for different reasons. But there's nothing that says that part-time people cannot be in a union.
Okay. Because not to brag, but when I worked at Taco Bell, I worked 39.99 hours every week. Because if, God forbid, if I worked 40. Like there was one time we were so short-staffed, they worked me within a minute of working 40 hours. And to the point to where the manager was like, you have to clock out at this point.
That would have made them pay you benefits?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they wouldn't do it. They're like, well, the argument was they also worked me as a manager without paying me manager salary or making me a manager. Like I would count down drawers. I had all the power of a manager, but because they would have to pay me like $2 or $3 more an hour. And the GM's argument was
messed up.
Because I was going to college at the time. He's like, but you can't work standard hours. Like you would have to work. I was like, dude, in Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I work 39.9 hours.
Wow.
And he was like, yeah, but if you worked full time, we would need you to work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Saturday. I was like, what does it matter?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. It was so stupid. But it was so they wouldn't have to pay me all that stuff. Yeah. And I finally, my grandfather passing away gave me the strength to finally leave there.
Take this job and shove it.
Well, he actually said something. So my grandfather, oh God, here we go. Drink your water. I'll tell you another story. My grandfather was he always looked mad. He was not a mean man. Never laid a hand on me, never yelled at me, none of that shit. But he always just looked angry. And there's one time when I was in college where I was working there, essentially doing a manager's job. I had people making more than me because they were routinely closing, which gave them a quarter more an hour, but they would show up late. I would have to work over to cover their shifts. And then I'm telling you, all the worker shit.
Yep.
I would close on a Saturday night, which meant being there till 4 to 5 in the morning.
Oh my God.
And I would have to be back at 8 in the morning
That's
to open on Sundays. And then I would work like 12-hour shifts. Like, it was insane. But I'm working there. I'm unhappy.
Clearly.
I go up, and I guess my granny wasn't there, so I sat there and just unloaded on my papaw. And I'm telling him all this. And I had an opportunity to go work at Walmart. Again, not to brag. But it was going to be more set schedules. Like, I had to be there Thursday at noon. I was like, that's going to be tough because I don't get out of class till 11. So trying to get from Pellissippi to Easttown Mall in the hour and eat and change because I would have to wear pants, God forbid, and all that shit. I was like, an hour is very stress-inducing.
Right.
Like, and I'm sitting there telling him, and then he just listened to me, and he said, "Are you happy?" I said, "Huh?" He's like, "Are you happy?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Then quit. You'll figure out a way. Life's too short to be unhappy." That's a man who, pre-World War II, was a very rough guy. Like, got into a lot of shit, him and his brother.
Yeah.
Went off, fought in... Oh, that's him right there. Fought in the Pacific, saw a lot of very gnarly shit.
Yeah.
Came back and changed his ways. Never went to church. That wasn't his thing. But he was, I'm going to work. I'm going to have a family. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. He was work for the railroad. He was probably also in a union.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to provide for my family.
Right.
And so, but he never talked. He never talked to me. Like, and then like, it was within 2 weeks he passed away. Had another major heart attack and passed away.
Yeah.
Had a heart attack, came back from it, and this is in the 90s when that wasn't normal. And then he had prostate cancer, and that weakened him enough to when he had the next heart attack, it killed him. And that was like 2 weeks later. And I went in and told my GM, I was like, either you need to pay me more, pay me what I'm worth, or my last day is on Sunday. And he was like, I'm not going to pay you more.
Good for you.
My last day is on Sunday. As I'm walking out the door, the little half door to go back to the back, he slammed it so hard, it made the window shake. Because I was a good employee. I was a very good employee and a hard worker, and he was losing a good employee because he refused to pay me like a quarter more an hour.
Absurd.
Yeah. I was making, I think, $3.85 an hour back then.
Yeah.
And he refused to pay me a quarter more an hour. Like, it's bonkers. But then there was a print shop. I badgered the guy there for 2 weeks to just get an interview. He told me later, he's like, if you had not badgered me, I would have never given you the job. Worked there. And that set off. If I hadn't worked there, I don't know where I'd be right now. But yeah. Why did I go down that rabbit hole?
We're talking about work.
Yeah. Talking
and
about my
jobs
grandfather.
And your grandfather.
So it wasn't quite take your job and show it, but it was, I think about that a lot. Are you happy? No.
Yeah.
Life's too short to be unhappy.
That's great.
Yeah. From a man who looked like he could punch a hole in the wall. In fact, I'll tell you one more story before we'll get back to this. My dad told me that, or it may have been my uncles, I don't know. Been playing poker with my dad and uncle since I was 8. I hear a lot of stories that I should not have heard. And they told me one, they were out playing and neighbor kid sicked a dog on my dad's younger brother, Doc. So he came up there and Papa worked nights, so he slept during the day. And Granny wasn't there, so they had to wake up Papa, which was terrifying because he worked night shift and he needed to sleep. We don't mess with him. He needs sleep. So he got him all, put him all in the pickup truck, took him to the hospital, got him fixed up. And on the way back, they said, all he said was, which house was it? And said he rolled, they told him, he drove up to the house. He said, stay in the truck. He went up and said he hit the front door so much they could see the windows on the second floor shake.
Wow.
That he almost knocked the door off the hinges.
Oh, wow.
For whoever hurt his son.
Aw.
Like, that's the man who said life's too short to be unhappy.
Uh-huh.
That's hilarious to me. Okay. Here's a controversial question.
Okay.
Do workers still need unions? Don't we have laws providing protections unions used to provide?
Do you think workers at Taco Bell are paid what they deserve and treated well now?
Now a lot better than when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But let's go with back then. No, hell no. Hell no.
Well, nothing is really that different between then and now.
Yeah.
There's the laws are a reflection of who's in power. And I think the business class got very organized in the early 70s, in the late 60s. If you look up something called the Powell Memo, it might blow your mind.
Okay. I've actually heard of this. So.
It's very underreported, and at least in my experience. And yeah, launched a war. It's still going on. And that was because they felt that workers and unions had too much power. And so if you look at what's happened in our economy along that same timeline ever since then, it's like their plan has been put into effect, and gains that workers and unions had made have been rolled back significantly. Obviously, when someone like Ronald Reagan was elected president, that
you don't say.
That was their guy that very much accelerated all of that plan. And I don't know that, we've necessarily had a really pro-union president. So people are pointing to President Biden right now, who's just walked the picket line. I think it's maybe the first one he's walked since he's been president, and this is not the first strike. So anyway, all that to say, if we look at the inequality that exists, something's not right.
Right.
And the level of poverty, just looking at one thing like child poverty, or whether people feel like they can have one job, whether people feel like they can afford a house ever, whether people feel like they could retire ever, those things are not an accident. And when workers have a democratic voice in the workplace, it's better for everyone. Like, it's better for those workers. It's better for whoever they're serving, because people want to work there and do a good job and continue to work there when they feel like they're treated with respect and make enough to live on. And we're nowhere near a situation where, a vast majority of people feel like that, I'd say, at work. Union density is really low, like really, really low, especially in the private sector. It's a little bit more in the public sector. So, yeah, I think if everyone was living in like a paradise, sure, we don't need unions, but we don't live there, and I think we would still need them even if that existed.
Well, it's because I'm a freaking what would you call it? Pop culture nerd.
Uh-huh.
I know way more about the WGA and the SAG strike than probably what a normal human being should know about. Mm-hmm. But hearing them talk is, have you deep dove in any of that? The WGA one is the really fucked up one. About how you used to be a writer on Cheers, and there were 23 episodes a year, and you were busy, I think it's like 9 or 10 months out of the year. And that was enough to live on. And you made a good living. But you're also living in a part of the country where it costs more to live. So to stay out there, you had to hope for jobs like that. And now you get TV shows that are on streamers that are 6 episodes a season. So you have to get one job and already be trying to get into another writer's room just to sustain, not to make the money that you used to make on Cheers in the 80s. And how fucked up and bonkers that is.
And you see that across every single industry.
Yeah.
It's not just one.
Yeah.
So it's a pattern.
Yeah. So I think that's where I've really gotten into it, and how, especially with the stuff now with like AI and the crazy shit that like the studios were coming back with, like, well, if you have a writer's room, you shouldn't need more than 4 people. So you can't have more than 4. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, if you're developing some crazy Star Trek show that needs more detail or whatever, you may need 10 to 12 writers.
Right.
Don't dictate what the top line is. Whatever the creator thinks.
And why do you think they would want to do that?
Because they want to make more money.
Exactly.
So this is
this
is the argument that no one can make me come down on their side. Here's my. Here, I'll get on this soapbox. I think it's so fucking stupid. I'm gonna curse more here. That a goal of a company is to make money for its shareholders or its board members, not to make the best product to put out into the world that will make them more money. So when you see shit like in a movie world, like HBO is owned by Warner Brothers, who decide that they are going to trash the Batgirl film that they've spent $80,000 on instead of sinking $10 million more in finishing it, because if they trash it, then they get an $80 million loss on their taxes, which will make more money for their shareholders.
Yeah.
So instead of putting something out there, in my mind, from a creative standpoint, that could influence some, because it was a black woman playing Batgirl, a young black girl, into being a superhero and sparking that in her world. Just one girl. That's all it's got to be. Just one. That's all that matters. You're like, we're going to make more money for our shareholders. Fuck your shareholders.
Right.
Fuck the board of directors. Fuck the CEOs for making more money than they should. Some comedian came up with the joke, said, creatives came up with Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, and Ted Lasso, and the CEOs came up with Quibi. Do you know what Quibi was?
I don't know what Quibi
was an app that you could watch TV on your phone, and it was vertical. And they would usually be between 2 and 10 minutes. And before it even came out, it tanked.
Oh, wow.
And they sunk all this money in it because it was a CEO's decision.
Wow.
Whereas Vince Gilligan created Breaking Bad, and it's one of the greatest pieces of art that's ever existed. A shareholder didn't come up with that.
No.
A board member did not come up with that. A CEO did not come up with that.
That's right.
Vince Gilligan came up with that.
And probably with others. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I hate to say it, sometimes stuff needs to happen like that to where it makes sense in my brain to where I can distill it down to somebody that I know who would be more right-leaning and be like, yeah, but you work at so-and-so factory, and do you think it's fair that the board members at the company you work for make more money than you make? What are they doing? They're not doing anything.
Yeah, you never know what someone is going to experience that takes the wool off their eyes. And sometimes it never happens, but sometimes it does. And I don't know. It's like, but I think they have to experience it. It's not just for a conversation. I think a conversation can help, but
I think a lot of people were like, well, these are Hollywood liberals that are making tons of money. It's like, man, a lot of those writers are having to work for Lyft or, you know, working shitty jobs to make extra money just to provide, because also they can't get a house. Speaking to your point about getting a house, they can't get a house for cheaper than $2 million in Southern California, which is also ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I don't know. Good Lord. I get off that. What is this most awkward transition? What is a union buster?
Oh. I mean, there are union busting firms, consultant or law firms, and they are, you know, employ people. And then there are union busting tactics that, you know, like anyone could do. An employer, a manager, a supervisor, a coworker, whoever. It is an industry, and it's $1 billion industry at this point.
Would you consider some lobbyists a variation on a union buster?
Yeah, but I think the term more refers to directly trying to stop workers from organizing to have a union or to have a contract. And so the goal is to scare, divide, sow fear and doubt, and make workers give up, you know, and or sometimes fire them. Fire the main ones and scare the rest. Threaten to, you know, some of the most common union busting tactics, and there's a lot of them now. CWA helped put together a website about that called unionbustingplaybook.com, where it's like, we'll show you the playbook for free, but companies are going to pay some firm for like, you know, millions of dollars. So, you know, dues money, like, ooh, they're going to take money out of your check, and like, how much is it going to be, and all this stuff. And I mean, like, for AT&T workers, like your mom, did she work for Bell South?
She worked for Bell South that then got bought up. She worked for South Central Bell that turned into Bell South that got bought up by AT&T.
Right, exactly. That history. That's the history of our union, our national union. But now for AT&T workers, it's 2.25 hours of their pay per month is what they pay in dues. And that works out to roughly 1.3% of their annual pay. But so let's say you make, you know, $22 an hour, you're paying 2.25 hours of your pay. So that's like 44 plus $5 more, something around $50 a month. Right. Like, and I might have done that math wrong, but
no, I think that's, I went to Fulton. What are you talking about? Asking me to double check your math. I'm the wrong guy.
Hey, now, shout out to Fulton. Shout out to Bell City.
No, I went to Fulton. I can slag on
It's
Fulton.
just right. And if you're like, it's meant to scare people. It's meant to, again, create confusion and doubt and fear. And so, you know, the owners at McKay's didn't employ like the most drastic of tactics, but the firm they hired, I'm sure, instructed them when workers said we want to form a union to meet with people in groups on the clock and talk to them about how great their benefits are and how much better they have it than the rest of the retail industry, using Walmart as an example, and took a AT&T contract for workers in the Southeast who are part of the kind of core side of AT&T, the landline side, and, you know, printed it out. This is a contract that's, you know, been bargained now for decades. So it's kind of thick. And they took their own personnel manual and they said to people in these meetings, so, you know, if you all vote for the union, you're going to go from this, and they have this little personnel manual, and they go to this, and they plop it on the table. Yeah. And it really didn't work. And people kind of laughed from what I was told, and were kind of like, what's wrong with having more benefits? Like, that's a real contract. Like, that's just a handbook. So it didn't work. But I think it's things like that, that given the workforce, it could have worked. people have thought, oh, that's a lot of bureaucracy. Like, I don't think we need that. Or there's, I worked with some Apple retail workers where the firm they hired is the same one that Starbucks has hired. They're called Littler Mendelsohn, one of the top union busting firms in the country, who told them to, go into the meeting with the workers and give a personal story and, don't sound anti-union. Like, say, unions are great. I'm not against unions. There was a time in this country, and my grandfather was in the railroad union.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Or the postal worker, I think this guy's grandfather, which is honestly, like, if you had actually meant that, you could have really told a story about how that actually really materially helped you in your life. But that's not where he was going. So he was like, but I don't see how we need a union here at Apple Retail, right? We're not the railroad. We're not the postal workers. Like, you all have input. We listen to you. I'm just giving you some examples.
Yeah.
They'll take vulnerable people and often recruit them to like an anti-union committee or like a vote no committee, where they can sort of go around and tell people some sob stories about they feel like everyone's going to get fired, or they're literally, there was a story from a guitar center that was trying to organize. This is not our union, a different union, where they had a woman tell the workers in these meetings, a coworker, that if they went union, this is what they tried to say. If, literally workers have no say in anything, but they'll convince people that once they have a union, well, what you have now, like in bargaining, that could go up or it could go down. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, why would we ever vote for something that would be worse?
Right.
Anyway, and so, but that's effective on some people if they don't know better when they hear it. And so they had a woman basically point that out and say, if we go union, I won't be able to afford the medicine for my dying dog, and like started crying. And that swayed enough people that they voted no.
Holy shit.
It's all kinds of psychological warfare. It's using really like negative emotions to their benefit, to manipulate people. And I mean, this is like, it's a decades old industry now. You can look on YouTube. This guy, it's called Confessions of an Ex-Union Buster or something like, or Confessions of a Union Buster. And he talks about what he used to do, to do all of this stuff. And, like the biggest challenge for him as a union buster was if workers already knew better, basically.
Oh, okay.
If they knew these tricks ahead of time, then they didn't work.
Yeah. I was kind of looking up, I swear I'm not just farting around on the internet over here. If Three Rivers ever organized and formed a union, and it looked like they did. Yeah.
And they have a contract, yeah.
Because, man, the more stories I read out of that place makes me not want to ever step in that place again. And then, but the reason why I say that is, but then you start reading and it's like, yeah, but us employees still need, it feels like that tactic of, but we're still working really hard. So if you don't come here, then we're going to lose our jobs, and we're working really hard.
Oh, I don't know. They've had a lot of changes. I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I think
that they still have the same. Oh, this is from.
No, the owner left after they.
This is still 4 days. This is 4 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
We have to preserve necessary change. Let's see. Employed by the general manager. Apparently, the general manager is a real jackass. I don't know who it is. I know it's somebody who used to run Dollar Generals or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all. Don't sue me for slander. I don't give a fuck. You can't do that. This is all stuff I've read on the internet.
Yeah.
So tough shit. But yeah, reading stuff about that place, and it's like, why had they not? But then I just found out, yes, they had. They had formed a union.
Yeah,
because
they
it
have.
seems absolutely bonkers what's going on in that place. So. Okay. What is a collective bargaining agreement, and who decides what is in it?
So that is the phase that workers enter after they win a union election, which is just proof of majority support. Sometimes people say that's like winning a seat at the table. But we like to say that's like you're just winning a ticket to the fight, because then you have to win a first contract. And that in itself is its own battle.
Okay.
And a union busting firm would advise an employer, that's your next frontier. Like, you can beat them at this, even though you lost, quote unquote, in the election. Like, you can make it impossible for them to get a first contract, blah, blah, blah. You see Starbucks doing this.
Okay.
So the agreement, though, is a legally binding contract. But both parties enter into negotiations. The employer is legally obligated to, both parties are, bargain in good faith. But sometimes they don't. And one or the other side can file an unfair labor practice charge. The National Labor Relations Board can investigate that and decide whether there is one. But companies often, or employers sometimes, bank on, they're like, whatever, that's going to take a while.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take a few of those. Like, we're just going to drag this out and hope that the workers give up. But you've asked me what an agreement is. So once each side, right, has to negotiate, and you've got a bargaining team that has some of the workers on it. I think that's part of the difference with the Teamsters' most recent contract, was they actually had some Teamsters on the bargaining team.
Nice.
But so ideally that's what you want, along with somebody else from the union who has experience bargaining. And the employer has whoever they have, and you pass proposals back and forth until you reach an agreement, and you have a tentative agreement. And for the workers, the union members, right, then get to vote up or down to ratify that agreement or not.
Okay.
And say, go back to the table, we don't like this, or what have you. But once it's ratified, that is the contract that the employer has to follow, and obviously the workers have to as well. But there's now something that is legally binding, that if they don't follow it, there can be consequences. And so it's something that the workers have had a say in. They didn't come up with it on their own. Both parties had to agree. But for the first time, they sat across the table as legal equals with their employer and helped to reach that agreement.
Okay. What typically leads to a strike?
Typically, it's when a majority of workers feel they have reached the last straw. Like, they've tried everything else and it hasn't worked. And they haven't figured out how else to have any leverage over the employer to either come to the table and bargain, typically. And that's the highest kind of demonstration of power that workers have. And so it's not something I think anybody takes lightly. And depending on whoever the union is, there's either a strike fund or there's not, or there's a strike fund and it's only partial pay. That's most of the time the case. Because, that's a lot of money to sort of keep around just in case.
Right.
And so, you're going to you likely would be sacrificing some of your pay depending how long you're out on strike, et cetera. And that the employer might fight back as well. And, there's different laws about that change all the time. So Reagan famously decided to just fire all the air traffic controllers who struck in 81 or whenever that was. I think it was 81. That wouldn't be as possible to do now. Today, I can't explain that exact law to you right now. But so it's kind of when they've reached the end of their rope. I don't think workers typically decide to do that. Yeah, for some sort of fun.
Yeah.
And
Well, in the, again, not to go back to the WGA or SAG strike. So I'd heard about this, and I think it was '08 when WGA struck, and they did it. This happened again this time. So Drew Carey. Mm-hmm. Did you hear what he did?
I don't remember.
He did it this time too.
Oh.
But there were two different places. It was like a Bob's Big Boys and a place called Swingers Cafe or coffee shop or whatever. If you went in there and presented your WGA card or your SAG card, everything was on him.
Nice.
And it just cleared up. It was like $500,000.
It's awesome.
So he was just like, no. And he
Awesome.
actually said, his tweet was, I'm glad this WGA strike is ending. It's officially over tomorrow at midnight. So go and get something
now.
and celebrate on me.
I love it.
Like that, he actually encouraged
Yeah.
people.
At the
Like,
final hour.
What a good dude that guy is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? Again, this is all depending on what the hell people think about this stuff at any given point. There can be an amazing showing of solidarity and support from community supporters, or not.
Yeah. Well, I think with them, there were a lot of actors and stuff. Like, let's say somebody like Tom Hanks was like, I'm going to donate like $400,000 to this. And they had a fund set up to help people during that. There's also, that was a big thing during the pandemic there. Shoot, now I can't pull his name. It's one of the guy who started some of the first comedy clubs. God bless it. I can't pull his name. He's passed away.
Yeah.
But his daughter started a like Comedy Gives Back thing.
Huh.
And they, during the pandemic, helped a lot of comedians out because they couldn't be on the road touring, making money. Like a lot of these just road dogs who are not making that much money.
Yeah.
And she started this nonprofit to help comedians who need back. And one of my favorite comedians, he's a jackass. His name's Bert Kreischer, the Machine. He's fucking awesome. But he does comedy with his shirt off. He's such, the movie Van Wilder?
I didn't see it.
It's based on him.
Okay.
Based on a Rolling Stone article about him. But, he seems like a frat boy douchebag, but he's like one of the nicest people in the world.
Yeah.
He actually tried to start, at one point, a nonprofit where he partnered with a female psychologist, and they were going to go from college to college to talk to young freshman boys and being like, hey, if she's a little drunk, no, you go home because you don't want to ruin her life over, just try. And he was wanting to, get outreach to younger boys and being like, hey, make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just good dude. But it turns out his last tour made so much money, he paid for over 200 comedians to have health insurance.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like shouting out those people who are supporting people who are struggling. 'Cause it's very, more people, there are people, there are companies we have mentioned on this, like Amazon. Like, what's Bezos? Like, not going to give a dime of his money to shit like that. But you got somebody like Bert who is like a working...
But he'll give millions of dollars to stop it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good Lord. Okay. We're circling in for the landing.
Okay.
Here in hour 4. What would you... So this... I'm going to give you 2 questions. You tell me which one you think is better to answer. What would you like to see more of in employee union relationships? Or what would you want more people to know about, realize about unions? Whichever one you think is better. Or you
And
can
the
answer
first
both.
one, do you mean like employer union relationships?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay.
Employer.
I'll go with the
Autocorrect
second
screwed me.
one. What do I want people in general to know more
To know more about,
unions?
understand more about unions. Like a log line. Or,
I talk a lot about this with a lot of people. I mean, I think, lots of people conflate right to work and at will employment. Neither of those are things that are directly about a union. those are things they're either meant to destroy unions or they're the opposite of a union. So I already talked about what right to work is. I'll say it again. You can go to work somewhere where the workers there have elected to form a union in the past. You don't have to join or pay dues to that union. You get to reap all the benefits. You don't get to vote typically on anything that happens in that union, but you get to demand representation and you get to reap all the benefits of whatever contract they've won. So it's nothing. People think that it means that unions are illegal. I mean, I think this is part of their mission. The Right to Work Foundation is to make people think it's all of these things, etc. But really it's intended to weaken and destroy unions, literally what it's meant to do. At-will employment, which is most of the country, but some states are more so than others. If you are not at a unionized workplace or aren't covered by a collective bargaining agreement, you're an at-will employee typically. And in states like ours, that means you could be fired, disciplined or fired for a good reason, a bad reason, or no reason at all. Right? Okay. And the night and day difference with being in a union, if workers have won something called just cause protections, which is fairly common, is the employer not only has to have a good reason, they have to be able to show it.
Okay.
That changes the whole game.
Yeah.
If they actually have to prove that something happened, the employee broke policy. Like, you can't break policy blatantly and somehow get protected. But there has to be a process, and they have to be able to show that you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And whereas they could just make something up, they don't even have to have a reason to let someone go.
Right.
It might say something in their handbook about this, that, or the other. There's just a 3-strike thing or write-ups or whatever. They don't actually have to do any of that. They could just let you go. Don't even have to have a reason. That's the reality of anybody that doesn't work at a unionized workplace with a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
So when people talk about being scared about being fired for organizing, you can already be fired for anything. The only thing that changes that is to organize.
Okay. Is there anything I missed that you really want to hammer home before I get to these last 3 or more just about you? And let's kind of.
I mean, I would encourage people to look up just like the union advantage. I think right now the Department of Labor has things that show the clear differences about being in a union. Okay. And yeah, I mean, I also think that solidarity is really important between unions, between workers, and then also with lots of other community struggles that impact working people in general, whether that's housing or voting or reproductive rights or trans rights or all of that.
Hey, easy. One at a time. Do you set goals or a checklist?
Do I?
Yeah. That's what I said, these last 3 or more.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
Lots of lists. Lots of goals, lots of lists.
Like, are there... Here, I'm going to piggyback off that one. Do you have a thing of like, I would like to get 5 unions up and running in this calendar year? Like a benchmark like that? Or is that too hard?
Well, it is really hard. I think I would like to get to a place to be able to kind of have that more bird's eye view. I think I'm starting to get there in this role. And then we're also inundated with requests.
Okay.
And you don't know how many of those are going to get rolling. And I would hope that we could also like grow our capacity to handle those requests so we could have more success with folks organizing. So I think it's more along the lines of like, these are some priorities and like priority campaigns. And then here's like a timeline we hope that they're going to win.
Okay.
You know?
Do you know what you'd like to do in the next 10 years?
You know, one thing I want to do is renew my passport.
I got to do that too.
It's expired so long ago. I haven't left the country since 2006, and I would really like to do that. And I don't have a plan yet for where, but I know I should just renew that passport and make a plan.
I have investigated. In fact, on my desktop at work, because I know no one there listens to this, I had the link to what I needed to do.
Yeah.
All this stuff. It's kind of a pain in the ass.
It's kind of a pain in the ass, which is why I put it off. But
And I can't believe I have to submit a new photo because I still look like this. This is what I've looked like for the last fucking 13 years.
you know, they made a passport office in the new student union at UT.
Really?
FYI.
Damn it. Just, oh my God. Just had a muscle cramp going in
dear.
the wrong way. I was
Oh,
like,
no.
oh, Jesus. All this is staying in the podcast. Like, I just tried to move and it was like, oh, gee. Oh,
I
God.
heard something.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, ow.
Yeah, I need to get a new passport. I've been looking at, do you know about Scott's Cheap Flights?
I don't.
It's a free.
Maybe I've heard of it, but
You can sign up for the free mailing list, or you can do like, I think it's like $20 a year. Like Dale and Sean were doing the $20 a year to be a pro.
I think that's where I heard about it.
Yeah, and you get alerted when there's a great deal on a flight. Well, the problem is, here's my hack. Sorry, Scott's Cheap Flights, if you're listening to this. Whenever you get that alert, then they just use Google Flights. So then what you do is go to Google Flights, because all of theirs are out of like New York or Boston or somewhere else. I'm like, well, hell, it's expensive as shit. Sometimes, like I tried looking at going to Scotland, and if I flew to Boston to get the $400 trip to Scotland, it was going to be more expensive than I just flew out of Knoxville.
Wow.
But I learned that, and in Google Flights, it actually populates the calendar for you, so you can see when it's like, oh, if I go on a Thursday, it's cheaper than if I go on a Friday.
Yeah.
Like stupid shit like that. There's also kayak.com/explore, where you put your home airport, and it'll just populate the map of what it costs to go anywhere.
That's fun.
And you can set dates, or you can say anytime around this time.
That's really fun.
So I've found,
Good to
in
know.
doing that, I found a $150 round trip ticket to New York. And
Shut
I
up.
bought it before I booked anything else, because it was like, that's cheap as, and this is pre-Allegiant.
That's amazing.
It's like, that's cheap as shit.
Yeah.
I'm buying that. Now, that's why I stayed in Harlem, bringing it back to the
Yep.
beginning. That's why I stayed in Harlem. So there you go. There's my two. Renew your passport.
I love it.
Accountability. What is
I
it
need
called?
more of those.
Accountability buddies.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of that?
I have. It's
I will renew mine. You
strange
have to
word.
renew yours.
Okay, got it. Right.
You need accountability.
I was like, is that an app?
No, accountability buddies is
It is
accountability
the thing that it sounds
buddies.
like. Got it.
Yeah. So that's what helps me. Hey, if you're going to help me, if you're going to do this and I'm going to do this,
No,
we
that's
push one
good.
another
That will
to
help.
do this.
It
Yeah.
does. It helps
Yeah.
me.
That's our homework.
External. What do you call that? Never mind. We won't go down that.
External factors. I don't know.
Something.
I come up with accountability buddies. That's enough.
I love it.
Yeah. All right. Final question. The big question. If you could talk to the 14-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell them?
Oh my. Oh my. Oh my.
Get to the South sooner. I'm just kidding.
I would say look away from that older boy, and maybe get more into sports and just try to be with boys your own age. Let's see. And
This is amazing.
I don't know.
This may be the
Like,
best one.
Find a hobby that's not older boys.
I'm sensing a
Sensing a theme.
Yeah.
That was me at 14. I got pretty derailed there, and it was hard to come back on track. Yeah. You know, like it's quite an age, puberty and high school, and then your brother gets famous overnight in that same age. It's a lot. It was a lot.
See, I stole that from another podcast, Ryan Sickler of The Honeydew. But he asked people what they would do, tell their 16-year-old self. I was like, 14 is much better. 14 is you're a freshman in high school.
I think you're way more vulnerable.
You're a freshman in high school.
It's more pivotal.
You're back at
You're still a kid, kind of.
You're back at the bottom of the mountain.
But you're expected to be, on the rise. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Okay. Hey, everybody
more
at home,
sports.
Avoid boys.
More dancing. Not so much older boys. Like, that's where you just get into some stuff.
Yeah.
Like, boys your own age don't know better, probably, like, to get into a bunch of shit. Just have some suspicion for the older boys. They are not necessarily a good idea. They're probably not, actually, more of the time than not.
Okay. It's a good way to end this podcast. All right. Thank you for being on.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.